Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Angeline Walsh. I'm a category specialist hire in the sourcing division in the Office of Government Procurement. And today I'll be giving you an overview of OGP Central Arrangements incorporating GPP, how GPP is incorporated when designing central procurement solutions, and some examples of central arrangements, which include green considerations. So why is this important to us as procurement professionals? Well, the purpose of the GPP criteria is to ensure that the goods or services being procured will have a reduced impact on the environment. By applying the GPP criteria, we're supporting government policy through the delivery of sustainable procurement solutions. So Brian mentioned earlier, or he referenced the OGP Central Arrangements catalogue, and I'm sure you're all also very familiar with the buyer zone, but just a quick reminder that this is where you can access all the information in relation to OGP Central Arrangements, specifically the environmental and social considerations included in an arrangement. And this information is generally included in the user guide, which is available for each arrangement on the buyer zone. So as you all know, Circular 1725 came into effect back in July of this year, replacing Circular 2019. And the new circular explicitly states that public bodies are to include GPP criteria where possible, and it specifically calls out the GPP implementation mandate, which should be followed by all public bodies. Step 2 of the implementation mandate focuses on the inclusion of GPP criteria once a decision has been taken to undertake a public procurement. So contracting authorities that are procuring goods, services or works must include GPP criteria if national criteria are available and where appropriate and proportionate. I've included 3 examples of national GPP criteria on the slide, but we'll look at these in a little bit more detail later. Where national GPP criteria are not available, contracting authorities should consider using GPP criteria from other sources. So, for example, the EU GPP criteria or best practices if available from other countries, or by using existing guidance to incorporate sustainability into specific procurement projects. And then in scenarios where no national or EU GPP criteria or other guidance for the goods or services that are being procured are available, public sector bodies should still endeavour to include criteria such as the minimum environmental criteria, which are provided in Appendix 3 of Buying Greener. So as a central purchasing body, the OGP are responsible for sourcing common goods and services for the public service. And to achieve this, we put in place contracts and framework agreements so that public bodies can buy these common categories of goods and services. The purpose of the GPP criteria is to ensure that the goods and services being procured will have a reduced impact on the environment. And GPP is a key element when designing our central procurement solutions, and it's considered throughout the procurement process. So firstly, we do this at the pre-procurement stage by carrying out market research, which may include issuing a pre-market consultation or PMC, in order to better understand and to provide insight about the capacity and capabilities of the market in relation to environmental and social considerations. The feedback received is considered as part of the procurement strategy and has the potential to assist with the development of the selection criteria, the award criteria, and may also facilitate improved specifications. However, it is important to state that feedback received is used to develop a broad picture, while at all times ensuring that there's no bias or unfair advantages created and that the PMC process is fully transparent. And then moving on to the procurement stage itself. So on the slide, you'll see opportunities during this stage where GPP may be considered for incorporation into our tender documents. So that being in the selection criteria, in the specification, in the award criteria, or through the application of life cycle costing where appropriate. And there may also be opportunities to include specific contract performance and contract management clauses. The incorporation of GPP at this stage is done by applying the approach that I outlined on the previous slide. And then also to say that where central arrangements allow for a mini competition to take place, the arrangement may accommodate the possibility for inclusion of GPP criteria at the mini competition stage. And underpinning all of this is that any such criteria or requirements must be related and proportionate to the subject matter of the contract, and that the fundamental principles of EU law, that being equal treatment, transparency, non-discrimination, proportionality, and mutual recognition, are adhered to. So moving on to our case studies, the first example of an OGP central arrangement incorporating GPP is the Single Supplier Framework Agreement for the supply of multi-purpose recycled office paper for printing and photocopying for the public sector. And Sectoral Target 7 sets out that from May 2024, where office paper for printing and photocopying must be procured, 100% of the paper must be recycled paper. And this was achieved by applying the national GPP criteria for products and printing services. The selection criteria used in the tender documents included a requirement for 100% recycled paper, and the verification method applied was that the paper had to bear the FSC recycle certification or PEFC recycle certification or an equivalent third-party certification. And then another selection criteria that was included was a requirement for the EU Ecolabel criteria. The outcome is that all the paper offered under this contract is manufactured from 100% recycled fibres, and by switching to recycled paper, the outcome is that huge environmental savings have been achieved when compared with the previous framework. So, for example, 7.5 million kilograms of wood and 176 million litres of water. Then our second example of an OGP arrangement incorporating GPP is the Multi-Supplier Framework Agreement for the provision of catering and hospitality services. And sectoral targets 2, 3 and 4 relate to food procurement and food waste prevention. And this is being actioned in this framework by applying the national GPP criteria for food and catering services. GPP criteria were included in the tender documents, in the selection criteria, in the specification, in the award criteria, and in contract performance clauses. So, for example, here, the selection criteria included a food safety management system where tenderers had to demonstrate adherence to a regulatory system such as HACCP. The selection criteria also included food waste prevention, where tenderers had to declare that they would sign up to the Food Waste Charter before contract award. The award criteria included, for example, the tenderer's proposal with regards to how they would provide a minimum of 10% organic products. And the outcome is that all framework members have strong environmental credentials, including ISO 14001 and Origin Green certification. All framework members are members of Ireland's Food Waste Charter. They all have an environmental management system in place and have committed to a move towards organic products in each of the food categories specified. And then moving on to our third example of OGP arrangements incorporating GPP criteria. And this is the Single Supplier Framework Agreement for the provision of remanufactured Windows notebook computers and associated services. So sectoral target 5 sets out that by 2025, a minimum of 80% of ICT end user products procured by public sector bodies under new contract arrangements are certified to EPEAT Gold Standard or are TCO certified or will have been remanufactured. So by applying the national GPP criteria for ICT products and services, the OGP saw compliance with ISO certification and kite mark standards or equivalent. And the kite mark certifies that the manufacturing process meets the specific British standard that you'll see stated on the slide there, which specifies the requirements for the process of remanufacture and ISO 9001 principles. And under this framework, the notebook computers are remanufactured not refurbished. And this means that remanufactured devices are subject to a rigorous manufacturing and testing standards that are not applied to refurbished devices. The OGP also determined a minimum technical specification, so the framework member must supply devices that either meet or exceed this specification. And the outcome here is that the environmental impact of using remanufactured devices versus new devices under the framework include a 94% reduction in CO2 and 1,200 kilograms of critical minerals have been protected. On average, remanufactured devices are 30% cheaper than new and they come with up to 3 years warranty. And the category team were the proud recipients of the Best Green Procurement Project of the Year at the National Procurement Awards in 2024. So, as already referenced, the purpose of GPP criteria is to ensure that the goods or services being procured will have a reduced impact on the environment. And the three examples of central arrangements show how GPP criteria has been incorporated by identifying the target, the actions taken throughout the procurement cycle, and how this has helped achieve the desired outcome. Applying a similar approach may assist you in incorporating GPP criteria in your own procurement projects. And you'll also see on the slide there are a number of supports and links which should be helpful to you. And that concludes my presentation today. Thank you for your time. And if you have any queries, please not hesitate to get in contact with the OGP. All the contact details are on the slide.